The Locked On Podcast Network presents the College Sports Big 3 in 30. The three biggest stories in college sports. From our local experts at the Locked On Podcast Network. Bringing you the real story. Why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 30 minutes. The College Sports Big 3 in 30 starts now with the biggest story in college sports.
We have been waiting 12 long years for another opportunity like the one Notre Dame has today.
You are Locked On Irish, your daily podcast on the Notre Dame Fighting Irish.
All right, let's get into it. I have spent the past week and a half thinking and talking about this game for practically every waking second, and guess what? I'm still not done. I did a solo preview last week, plus I had special guests on from the Notre Dame and the Ohio State side to get you ready for this game, but to make sure that I don't leave a single stone unturned, I wanted to make sure that I answer your final questions before the big game later tonight. So today, we're doing another mailbag, and we're only talking about the national championship. I got a couple questions about coaching moves in the transfer portal and other offseason stuff. We are saving that for another show because we have the next 7 months to talk about offseason. Let's savor the football while we can. And we got one more football game later tonight. So the first question, Mike Lucchini, do we think Jagasaw getting back involved in the line will be a net positive post-NAP injury? And second question, can Notre Dame recover if the start looks like the Penn State game? Let's talk about that offensive line. So Charles Jagasaw is going to start at left tackle. He apparently told Molly McGrath, she released that to the media. And yeah, Charles Jagasaw at left tackle is certainly intriguing. I should mention that I am taping this on Friday night because I'm leaving for Atlanta. So if we get some more news that Charles Jagasaw is not going to end up starting at left tackle and maybe plays right guard, I'm just telling you right now, I'm taping this Friday. So if any news happens between now and the day of the game, that's why I missed it. So let's just go under the assumption that Charles Jagasaw is telling the truth. He starts at left tackle and Rocco Spindler is going to give it a go. I think that there are some potential positives with Jagasaw playing left tackle. I think he can move a little bit better than Knapp, but I think Knapp is very comfortable. He's been playing all season long, and my biggest concern about Jagasaw is that we're not sure how he's going to hold up for a full game. Like, he did well against Penn State when he came in relief for Rocco Spindler, but it is a totally different ask to play all 60 minutes after he didn't play a single football game all year long. Like, it's great that he's back out there, but I don't really think he's in football shape. And if this game goes well into the fourth quarter and it's still in jeopardy, or if it goes into overtime, like, I'm going to be a little bit concerned about Jagasaw's endurance. But still, he's a great player. There's a reason why he was projected to be the starter before the season even started. And Mike Denbrock praised him and said that they were really excited about what he's capable of. And I thought his effort against Penn State was really strong. So I think that they're going to be okay at left tackle. Plus, Ohio State doesn't really have that much film on him. So I think that's good. But again, I'm worried about his endurance. And we'll see what happens at right guard. Like I said, I think Rocco Spindler is going to give it a go. We'll see how long he's able to hold up because he had to leave the Indiana game and he also had to leave the Penn State game. So I give him a ton of credit for trying to gut it out. But man, that is just, it's tough to do, especially if you can't plant on that foot while he deals with an ankle injury of his own. So if there's a situation where Spindler has to come out of the game, then what do? Do you move Jagasaw back to right guard where he played against Penn State? That seems like you're asking a lot of him. Or you put in Sam Pendleton, who actually started the season at left guard, but clearly things have been not right with him because they put in Jagasaw over Pendleton once Spindler went out in that Penn State game. So I'm not really sure if the coaching staff is very confident in Pendleton. It's just a really unfortunate situation to be going into the national championship and you don't really know who's going to be playing on the offensive line. But Notre Dame has been dealing with injuries all year long. That's been like the story of the season, the adversity and the fact that Notre Dame has been able to overcome it all. So I'm not really going to make excuses for Notre Dame in this one. I think the offensive line is going to be able to hold their own. Second question, though. Can Notre Dame recover if the start looks like the Penn State game? No, I don't think so. I don't think they can afford to go down 10-0 to start the game. Ohio State is just too good on defense to let Notre Dame back in it. I think Notre Dame has to start out hot. I'm not saying they need to go down the field and score a touchdown on their opening drive, although I would really enjoy that. But they need to make sure that they have their foot on the gas and then they are going blow for blow with Ohio State early on in the game because they need this to get to the fourth quarter, because I think that's where Notre Dame has their best chance to beat Ohio State and let that pressure, all that weight that Ryan Day and this team have been dealing with ever since that loss to Michigan, I think they'll really start to feel it in the fourth quarter if that game is still in the balance, and that's when Notre Dame can strike. But if Ohio State goes up early 14-0, and then Notre Dame has to scramble and try to pass the ball downfield, and Ohio State's just waiting for it, I don't really think that's a recipe for success for Notre Dame. So starting fast is absolutely critical in this game. All right, next question comes from @McHaleFC. Do you think one of the wide receivers will step up again like what Jaden Greathouse did versus Penn State? Well, they have to. If Notre Dame has any chance of winning this game, like they're not going to get by if there's not some productive wide receiver out there. So I actually think Jordan Faison is going to have a big game. He wasn't as much of a factor in that Penn State game. Give a ton of credit to Jaden Greathouse. He came up huge. It wasn't just that 54-yard touchdown. It was the great contested catch on 3rd and 9, and also the other catch on 3rd down on Notre Dame's final offensive possession to set up Mitch Jeter for the game-winning field goal. Like, I think he gained a ton of confidence when he made that catch right by the Penn State sideline, chirped him a little bit, and that sort of carried him throughout the rest of the game. That's just kind of how it works with wide receivers. If you get involved early, that confidence can help you out the rest of the way. So if Jordan Faison gets the ball early and often, like I think he will, because he's a great athlete and he can create some mismatches going up against Ohio State's linebackers and safeties, that's where I think he can excel. And I just have so much respect for this Ohio State defense. And I think that Jordan Faison is kind of like a nice little piece for Denbrock because, you know, when Greathouse, if he's lining up on the outside, or we'll see if Bo Collins even plays in this game, or Chris Mitchell, like when they're on the outside, it's going to be tough to get them the ball. But when you can motion guys around and create those mismatches, like, for example, that last drive Notre Dame had in the first half when Steve Angeli was in the game, they motioned Jordan Faison to the right. He had one-on-one man coverage with the safety, and he ran a slant route where he basically ran behind the wide receiver in front of him, basically used him as a shield, cut underneath him, wide open for a first down. Like, it's little things like that that you can do with Jordan Faison to create separation and get the chains moving. So I think he's going to have a big game, but I also think that this could be a big game for Eli Raridon. I bet most people thought I was going to say Mitchell Evans. No, I think Ohio State is going to be keying on the tight end Mitchell Evans because of what he did last year. That was like Mitchell Evans' breakout game. He had that one amazing one-handed catch. Ohio State's like, all right, we know about him. We can't let him get hot. So when Notre Dame comes out in 12 personnel, I think Eli Raridon might be forgotten about, and he could sneak out and catch a big pass. Like, they tried to hit him in the end zone in the Penn State game. He drew a pass interference penalty, so it worked out. But I think that teams kind of forget about number 9. He's become a really good blocker, especially now that Notre Dame hasn't been able to use Cooper Flanagan because he suffered that Achilles injury. So I think that the Ohio State defense might forget about Eli Raridon, and he's going to come up and make a few catches. Mitchell Evans has become like the default X factor, or guy who's poised to have a breakout game. I'm going a little bit against the grain. I think Eli Raridon is going to have a few big catches. Not saying he's going to have 100 yards, but I think he's going to come up with some key catches, and I think Jordan Faison is going to be the wide receiver who really steps up in this game. Next one, at Scriber2323. What do you think about Notre Dame's chances of being able to contain Ohio State's receivers? Look, you're not going to shut them down. They're just too good. Like, they're amazing, right? The fact that they have Jeremiah Smith, the true freshman phenom, one of the best wide receivers we've ever seen, and then Emeka Egbuka, a senior who's a stud, who torched Notre Dame last year for 7 catches and 96 yards. He's great. And then Carnell Tate is their third wide receiver. Carnell Tate would easily be wide receiver 1 if he was on Notre Dame right now. So even though Notre Dame's secondary has been terrific all season long, I have a ton of faith in them. They're not going to be able to shut these guys down because they are just too good. So I think Notre Dame is going to run man, and they're going to run some zone. I think there's been a little bit too much talk about Notre Dame running man coverage, and I know that Leonard Moore said that we're not going to, change what we do. Like, that's right. But Notre Dame isn't running man like 90% of the time. Just because they run it more than everyone else in the country doesn't mean they run it exclusively. If you look at the data, they only run it 55% of the time. So it's not going to be as much about what coverage they're in. It's going to be about what Will Howard thinks that they're in. They're going to probably try to disguise their coverage as pre-snap to try to confuse him and get him to make some mistakes because, as we know, Notre Dame really needs to win the turnover battle in this game. So I think they're going to throw out some exotic pre-snap stuff to try to confuse Will Howard. Yeah, sometimes they're going to run man, sometimes they're going to run zone. But if they look like they're in man and then they run zone, or they look like they're in zone and then they switch back to man, like that's the kind of stuff that could force Will Howard into making mistakes. And I think you're going to see a lot of that. So Notre Dame has a good chance to try to contain him. I mean, I thought they did a good job last year. Marvin Harrison Jr. only had 3 catches for 32 yards, but he did get hurt in that game, and Benjamin Morrison was covering him for most of that game. So different task for Leonard Moore going up against Jeremiah Smith, but I think he's up for it. So Notre Dame just has to try to contain them as much as possible and limit the big plays. Like Jeremiah Smith caught that little dump pass and went 70 yards to the house in the first drive of that Rose Bowl. Notre Dame can't let that happen. I don't think they will because their secondary tackles exceptionally well, but this is a very difficult task. I think that they're up for it, but we're going to have to see. Don't get shocked or surprised or bummed out when Ohio State's wide receivers make a big play. That is going to happen. It's probably going to happen more than once. It's going to be about limiting and making sure that those don't start to happen over and over again. If that happens, Notre Dame's defense is going to be in a good position to make some plays.
From the first whistle to the final drive, FanDuel makes the NFL playoffs even more exciting. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win that first bet. That's $300 to keep the action going. The FanDuel app is easy to navigate, and the variety of bets keeps every game exciting. Plus, when you win, you get paid instantly. No waiting around for your winnings. Whether you're betting on your favorite team or just looking to add a little bit of juice to the playoffs, FanDuel has you covered. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today and get started with $300 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
Ohio State's mission throughout the playoffs has been to leave no doubt. And that's exactly what needs to happen tonight.
You are Locked On Buckeyes, your daily podcast on the Ohio State Buckeyes.
The emotions are high, sometimes they're very low. And now we're right here. The Buckeyes are in the national championship game tonight. And one thing throughout the entire playoffs, Ryan Day has been preaching, leave no doubt. And that's don't leave it up to a call. Don't leave it up to a play. Leave no doubt. Let your play do the speaking, and you're going to win the game. And I think that same thing has to happen tonight, that the Buckeyes can't leave it up to a play. They can't leave it up to a call. They can't let somebody else dictate the outcome of the game. They must take that into their own hands, and they must leave no doubt during the Natty tonight.
Yeah, they must leave no doubt. They must have no doubt. That's going to be the key to the game is can the team that showed up against Oregon a few weeks ago do it again? Like, can Will Howard trust his arm against Texas? We didn't see that. I think we saw conservative. We saw too concerned, and rightfully so. Texas defensive backs are fantastic. We didn't take as many chances. We didn't try to force anything, but this is a game to where it's like if Jeremiah Smith has an inch, you got to force it. You got to trust what you would have done all season. If this Buckeye team can trust what they do all season and not have doubt, they'll be fine. And I think that's the key to the game. And as far as, like you said, Day is right about that. Don't let this get down to a targeting, rule like that took them out of 2019. Don't let it get out to a fumble call in the same game. All of these things, don't do it. And we've seen that so far. Jack Sawyer, the play, you know what I mean? The strip, the ball bounces, secure it. Don't get the touchdown, end the game right there. That's the things we need to say. That could have been a oh man, what if moment. We've had so many what if moments under this Ryan Day regime. Like what if this and what if that? We have to put that all their head. Get it to where the bad call happens. Honestly, like when you're up 21.
Yeah.
Like you did Oregon and like you did Tennessee. So it's I don't know. It's crazy. I like their mindset. They seem to believe in their mindset. It's not just coach speak. But on the other side of it, Notre Dame believes in everything they're doing too. So this is a real mental battle in this game, a real psychological game, if you will.
Psychological game is a very good way to describe it because when you think about the national championship, you're going up against a team that is your caliber. They have earned the right to be here.
Yeah.
And this path for both teams is harder than any other path to get to the national championship game. And so the psychological thing is huge. While there's a physical part of it, both teams are battling injuries. The physical part is expected. But sometimes these types of games, the Super Bowl, the NBA Finals, the national championship game in college football, sometimes these games are won or even lost because of the mental aspect of it. And I think Ohio State, they're able to find ways to bounce back after boneheaded decisions, or even Will Howard. I can't get away from it. I give Will Howard 2 bad throws a game. I just expect it. Unfortunately, the last game was an interception, but I give him 2 bad throws a game. He generally does not allow those things to get him off of his game or to keep him down. The one time it happened, I think he was physically not 100%, and that's why that game partially ended the way that it did. But for the most part, this team has been able to overcome mental hurdles all season long, offensively, defensively. You've even seen the kicker, Jaden Fielding, overcome some mental blocks that he's had and made some big kicks. I think against Oregon,
Mhm.
And that aspect is huge because if Ohio State was physically ready for battle, cool. But if they weren't mentally ready for battle, Jeff, I don't think you or I would be confident that they would win this game. But I think that mental aspect is a big reason why people like us believe Ohio State will win tonight.
Yeah, that's the thing. It would be disrespectful for me to question this team's, mental toughness and the way they bounce back, because this is what makes this game so unique. And this is why we love this first time ever, college football national championship. I've just watched this team play 3 games. I would be a complete dope to say, like, oh, I don't know if they got what it takes to tough out a game when we just saw them, we saw them, again, we've said it a million times, recover from the Michigan loss, bounce back, play an SEC team, mash them, then play the best team in the country at that point, mash them, and then to play a very, very, very talented Texas team, overcome, everything, bad play, bad overall play by the quarterback, couple bad bounces, interception, all this, and have a goal line stand and win the game by 14. Like, it would be ridiculous for me to question, like, can this team, overcome adversity? Will they get rattled? Will they get shaken? Do they have the mental makeup? And even Ryan Day, I think we've talked about it already. Like, I think Chip Kelly helped and Knowles helped, but like, he's managed the game better. He hasn't panicked on the timeouts. He's not freaking out on the sideline over something that's already happened. He's able to move on and adjust and not let a bad play continue to haunt him, for the rest of the game. So, like, I have zero worries about whether this team's mentally tough enough. And a lot of that comes from being, you got a lot of four-year guys. You got a lot of guys who have been through so much and heard everything. But what I like the most is, like, typically it's a one game. Like, if it's a regular season, the pressure on Ohio State because of being Ohio State. Here's the thing. We've already seen 3 games. Like, Notre Dame can try all they want. I don't care. They can point at the numbers on, the betting sites or whatever. Nobody is going to believe they're an underdog after they just won 3 playoff games to get here.
Not at all.
So the huge advantage that every single team that plays Ohio State usually has isn't there. And that's giant. It's really like, I've always said this, if things are even, Ohio State, always has a chance. So that's what I like most about this, is that they can't play the, like, whoa, man, if anybody says nobody thinks we can do it in this game from either side, they're crazy. So that's what I like most, is like, this is really about, mental toughness, physical toughness, and, who really adjust. This is about adjustments. This is a game of adjustments.
Do you think Ryan Day is up to the challenge to adjust on the fly like he needs to tonight?
I do think he is, only because he's done it. He's been prepared for every game. Texas was a little iffy. That was a kind of a weird called game. So I guess when I really look back at that was probably the worst game of the 3, obviously, but still, like, I don't know. Some of the plays were there. Like, I look back at the Tate drop on the goal line. I'm like, perfect play call. I look back but I mean, then I also look at the screen pass, perfect play call.
Yeah.
So I think he's done pretty good, but the way that they played, the other 2 has just been amazing. And even when I go back to look at how they played Penn State and how they played Indiana, 2 other playoff teams, it wasn't the really bad coaching game was Nebraska and Michigan. Those were the 2 that, like, really sit on Ryan Day's shoulders this year. We're past that now, but most overall, the games have been like, you get a feel for what's working and keep at it. And Will Howard's been a big part of, being able to trust your quarterback helps.
So, Jeff, when it comes to this type of game, I think any coach out there and any player out there will tell you there are things the opposition can do, if they're being honest, that the opposition can do to take advantage of that team's weakness. While Ohio State doesn't have many weaknesses, they do have some. I'm going to throw it to you first, Jeff. What concerns do you have about this game tonight?
It's definitely Notre Dame's run defense. If Notre Dame, because Ohio State's running game is not great. They've been pretty good, in the playoffs, and they've been able to, power out some first downs and stuff, which has been awesome. I think Judkins, like, as far as, like, what he's done this season, doesn't jump off the screen. But then if you really look at it, he's really got some good hard yards. Against Texas, he was awesome. But if Notre Dame can shut that down without bringing help, and then they can go man to man, that definitely a problem for Ohio State. If they have to go, I mean, it's so cliche, but if Ohio State has to go one dimensional, then obviously it's going to be a tougher game. But that's the one weakness I see, is that Notre Dame's just run defense at front seven can really turn it into a one-dimensional game. And then now Howard has to play a perfect game. Can he do it? Yes. But that would be my worry, is that we can't get especially Henderson going and open up the pass game. That's a huge concern for me.
One that's in my head, and it's been in my head for a while, as regards to Notre Dame's defense as well, is their defensive line. And while that unit is dealing with their own set of injuries, Ohio State's offensive line has been able to get by for 3 games by rotating at guard. And at some point, I've been wondering if it's going to be a massive issue. It was an issue against Texas, but Ohio State was able to overcome that obstacle and find a way to win a game by double digits against a Texas front that's one of the best in the country. While Notre Dame's is not in the same category to me as Texas or even Oregon or even Tennessee's defensive line. I don't even think Notre Dame's defensive front is as good as Michigan's, and maybe not as good as Nebraska's. Like those are some dudes that they have up front. My issue comes into, if the rotation at guard is wrong, maybe all of a sudden they have the wrong guy in at a time when Notre Dame sees him. It's like, oh, we can exploit this guy right here, and they take advantage of it quickly. Or if Josh Fryer at right guard, maybe even Donovan Jackson at left, right tackle for Fryer, or left tackle for Jackson. Let's just say that they're not as consistent as they have been. Notre Dame has guys up front that can take advantage of Ohio State's offensive line, and they can bring pressure over and over and over again to cause weaknesses, to open up the weaknesses in the Buckeyes O-line, which will allow them to play man-to-man. Well, I don't advise anybody to play man-to-man against against Ohio State. If you're able to get pressure on Will Howard and get him off of his spot and get him off script, that's an avenue for Notre Dame to play man-to-man, and it could be a bad thing for the Buckeyes.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's one of those things. I look at it and I'm like, I know that, and I know that Notre Dame, like what I see, they can do it, but I don't know if we're like, I think you just kind of said it. I don't really know that Notre Dame is a better secondary than what Ohio State's already seen. I think they're probably better than Oregon. I think Oregon's secondary got exposed, but they're not better than Texas. And that's not an insult to Notre Dame, but they're not a better secondary than Texas. So here's the thing. Everybody says, oh, the blueprint for shutting down Ohio State's offense is what Texas did. Yes, if you have NFL players in the secondary and several if nothing worse, almost NFL players rotating on the defensive line. Yes, you are correct. That is how you slow down Ohio State's offense. You would get no argument from me. There's no secret that, and just like Ohio State's defense is a little like this, but they showed last week that they might be a step above. But yes, if Notre Dame keeps it close, their defense is going to look really good, and they're going to fight and struggle. It's going to be how it's called too. If they let them, if they let them play physical and let them play, up in them, that's going to be great. But it's also a situation to where, I know it sounds crazy, but like if Ohio State gets a little bit of a lead, then now all of a sudden we're talking about a whole different ball game, because now your defense. Let's also remember that your defense still is based on your offense, because this is the last game of the year. Nothing else matters after this. So like Notre Dame's defense playing really good and their offense is not good enough. So that really is going to dictate like chances you take, risk you take, blitzes you make, and all these things, as to where like Notre Dame wants to just be probably within 10 points the whole game and have a good 7 minutes to score a couple times and win the game. And that's how they could win this game. There's no doubt about it. Ohio State wants to be up 14 and turn the dogs loose. That's how they're going to try to win the game. So it's so easy to say that you can play man-to-man versus Ohio State, but like that can't last forever.
I love going to live events, whether it's sports, music, theater, or comedy. One of the most fun evenings this year was me and my wife getting a chance to go out. The excitement, the energy, it's unforgettable. It's unmistakable. Gametime has a new feature called Gametime Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Gametime Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. curation makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and more near you. You can take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime.
Kentucky basketball took it down to the wire against the Alabama Crimson Tide.
You are Locked On Kentucky, your daily podcast on the Kentucky Wildcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
102-97 win over the Alabama Crimson Tide, a game that Kentucky absolutely could have won. And yet here we are recapping a loss. Going to be breaking down this one for you, the positives, the negatives. I think that in this game, you kind of just got beat, and you could have won, and it is what it is. There's no officiating gimmick, although we will talk about that. There's no massive frustration. Obviously, there's some defensive issues we'll get to, but it's kind of just a loss to one of the better teams in the nation. Thank you guys so much for making Locked On Kentucky your first listen every single day. I want to remind everyone out there that we are free and available on all platforms. If you're watching on YouTube, subscribe to the show. If you're listening on podcast, you can subscribe there as well. Let's go ahead and get into it. I definitely did not just spend the last 35 minutes recording an episode only to finish the show and realize that my mic was muted the entire time. So we're going to do it again. We're going to back this one up. We're going to talk about this one all over again. Definitely not something I'm against right now. Of course, there are a lot of different interesting things that happened in this game. I think that the way that Kentucky played offensively was good enough to win, but a lot of what you do on the defensive end is going to win or lose you ball games. Mark Pope said it in the post-game press conference. Some of the things that Kentucky was fighting: fatigue, injury, frustration. I think that was a shot at the officials, which is probably the most you're going to get out of Mark Pope when it comes to officiating this season, unless it gets worse, which it absolutely can. I think that's clear. But yeah, Kentucky in this game didn't do enough down the stretch to win it. Again, 97 points on pretty efficient shooting, especially considering your opponent. You couldn't keep him off the foul line, and you couldn't stop Grant Nelson. We've continued to talk in these preview and recap episodes about matching up with the opposing team's physical forwards. And Kentucky, game in and game out, doesn't have a dude to do that. They do not have somebody at the 4 to guard the opposing 4. And look, the fact that Kentucky's even 3-2 right now in the SEC, after having played Florida, Georgia, Mississippi State, Texas A&M, and Alabama, it's impressive. It is impressive. This team was put together in about a month and a half, late last spring. These kids didn't even know each other this time last year. Most of them didn't. Most of them didn't know Mark Pope outside of Jax. That's it. And you've beaten Florida. You've beaten State. You've beaten A&M. That's 3 top 25 teams according to Ken Pom. You played 3 straight games against AP top 15 teams. It's hard to win and just keep winning, especially given the circumstances. This is a tough league with a lot of tough teams, and it's hard to win. And it's hard to beat a team like Alabama, who can beat you in so many different ways. It's interesting to me, for those of you that watch the show, and there were some of you in the comments saying some of the things that I was saying in the preview episode, which is like, this is a good Alabama team. This is like one of the best teams in the country, a team that can absolutely win the national championship. They have good guard play. They play well down low. Their defense has significantly improved. They play well in transition. They shoot the 3. They've got a good coach. I mean, this is a very well-rounded squad. And yet there was a large section of Kentucky fans out there that were running headfirst into this one. And I understand the confidence, expecting to win. Kentucky was favored. This is Mark Pope's first loss in Rupp Arena where he was favored. And there are a lot of Kentucky fans just running headfirst into this one saying, Bama's overrated. They're not very good. We're going to blow them out. It's just like, do you understand kind of what we're going up against here? I mean, this is the exact same thing as the Florida game, except things didn't work your way for the final 5 minutes or so. Florida is one of the best teams in the nation, full stop. Alabama is one of the best teams in the nation, full stop. Congratulations. Your reward for playing all these teams is by going on the road to Vanderbilt, who is absolutely not a doormat. Very good team. And then you get to play on the road at Tennessee, who is also one of the best teams in the nation, probably better than Florida and Bama, probably, because of what they can do to you defensively. So, credit Alabama. It's a good team. Frankly, the two things that I think lost you this game were the inability to prevent Grant Nelson from driving to the rim and the 14 extra free throws that Alabama took. Which, well, let's just go ahead and get that out of the way. For the most part, the free throws that Alabama earned were warranted. They went and drove to the basket over and over and over again. Kentucky does not have a player on their roster that can consistently defend personnel like Alabama has without fouling them or giving up a basket or both. Nelson, a 6'10", 6'11", transfer from North Dakota State, you can find him anywhere, gentlemen, outmuscled you in this game. 6'11", 230, drove to the rim, and scored with efficiency. On top of this and the free throw shooting, I don't think the three ball is necessarily what beat you today as far as the entire game goes. It's certainly what beat you in the final few minutes. But as far as the entirety of the game, you didn't, as Kentucky, you understand this is one of the best three-point shooting teams in America. Like, they make more than almost anybody. And yet you continued to, whenever they set screens to get their shooters open, you continued to go under? You realize that Mark Sears or Nelson or whoever it is, Holloway, Youngblood, Phylon, who had a couple big threes in the second half, you understand, like, they're going to pull. Like, that's their whole philosophy, is they're going to shoot the ball. You realize you have to step out on that, right? And maybe your argument is, well, if you step out and overcommit, they're going to drive to the basket. You got to pick your poison here. You kind of have to. The 2 threes that Grant Nelson hit at the beginning of the game were crucial. Massive for this one. If you don't get those, this game's either won by Kentucky or it's going to OT.